Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Hormones podcast. I'm your host, Sheridan Decker, and today I have the privilege of speaking to Natasha Sidoti. So, she is a Sydney based naturopath with a background in many things, but including integrative medicine. So, thank you so much for being here today with me.
Hi, Sheridan. It's really fun and a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I almost feel like we should have recorded the first 25 minutes talking because there was a lot
It's
of
usually more interesting.
yeah, yes. And all those cracky bits and pieces, especially when you connect with other people and it's like, oh, you do this, you do that. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of nice.
It's great to get updates and keep your finger on the pulse.
Oh, I know. And especially, I always say to people, it's interesting talking to other practitioners who normally I wouldn't see or meet you unless we went to an online webinar, maybe of something that was the same, or you did a workshop for, an allergy clinic or something, and I attended. Like, it's be very almost rare for us to cross paths otherwise in such
That's right.
big space. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. So, for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, what you love working in, so we can get a feel for a bit of who Natasha is?
Sure. So I prefer to be called Tash, otherwise I think I'm in trouble. So feel
Done.
free to do that. I love and am very passionate about naturopathy, and I love the juxtaposition of the traditional philosophy of naturopathy coupled with all this amazing functional medicine framing that we were talking about earlier. So the modern day naturopath is this really fascinating fusion of treating the whole person holistically, using a lot of liquid herbal medicine. So for those that are watching this, you can see it right behind me. And taking really solid case taking, because this practice has existed for a very long time, long before these functional tests. So your case taking and clinical observations always come first. And I really emphasize that. I love tests, and I used to work in technical support for tests, but we can't just rely on them. We need to remember to use our own intelligence and our own experience to observe what's happening right in front of us.
Yeah, I think you're bang on with that, because what I've noticed is, like, I obviously love the testing and it's a foundation of my clinic and the way I practice, but there are enough cases that come through where the testing is not telling me a lot and someone's got a whole range of symptoms. And even though I want the testing to rule out big things, H. pylori or something big in there, I want to know. But at the same time, if you ran off the testing alone without, say, your experience, your 10, 15 years behind you, you would still miss pieces of the puzzle. You couldn't be, and like we said, you couldn't be a scientist alone. You still, first and foremost, need to be a holistic naturopath.
That's right. Beautifully said. And isn't that great that the human touch and the human observation, the instincts, intuition favoring a really well-stocked mind, those things coming together matter. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to be doing what we're doing.
AI. This is
AI.
who we are. It's an AI world. They will
I
read your
know.
skill test, tell you what to take, get rid of blasto, and you're done. Yeah, no, not quite the same.
There's so many layers. So yeah, my background is in technical support, and I'm very holistic. I think both go together. They're not mutually exclusive. They don't conflict one another. I'm passionate about integrating herbal medicine and lifestyle with the technicalities of what comes through the tests. I have 3 children who have now in their 3rd year of a homeschooling bush community. Since the lockdowns, we took them out of public school. So I'm very involved in this homeschooling bush community. And it really connects to the philosophy of naturopathy, when nature gives the body the tools and the space to find its homeostasis or its equilibrium.
Yeah.
I've loved watching their nervous systems shift by learning outdoors. I've loved seeing their sleep improve because they're really tired. They've been outside all day. Cortisol levels down, immune systems up, gut health improved. And what a great way to learn, especially with all these viruses that people are concerned about, to be outdoors, getting vitamin D and, improving all the microbes we expose ourselves to as well when we're outside. So that microbial diversity is so fantastic for our gut microbiota. as well.
Isn't that such a good reminder? Because how often do we get pulled into, like, because everyone's spending so much time on social media. So there's always a new supplement, there's always a new
Mhm.
polyphenol, there's always a new prebiotic, there's always a new herb to take, digestive support. Like there is all these things, nervous system support, but sometimes it is also just coming back to barefoot grounding, being
Yep.
outside, sun on my skin, like those sort of old age things
Mm,
that we kind of forget about because we're so pulled into this new world of like supplement overload,
that's
which
right.
have a
Mm.
time and place. But what about just the bare basics that we're totally skipping over?
Yeah, exactly. So we don't want to skip over the bare basics. We love the specificity of some of the research. It's fantastic, but it should never be the key pillar to our healing. It's a very supportive pillar. And as you say, being outside, I mean, that's part of what makes us human. And it's
Mm,
once the nervous system and the immune system are talking to each other in a really coherent way, so many other things fall into place. Hormones, gut, sleep, you name it, skin.
mm,
So yeah, and I try to remind clients this is not just a luxury item
mm.
to have some time outdoors. It's not a nice to have maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday. It should be a part of our day-to-day life in some shape or form.
Yeah, 100%. Did you, coming into this naturopath space, did you have a health journey or something that pushed you to this, or were you just one of these intuitive people who are like, this is the space I want to go into, and I know I'm going to make a difference in the world, and in 15, 20 years, it's going to be my thing? No, but you know what I'm saying? Like everyone either has a journey or they just have a passion and interest in food, nature, nurture. Like there's usually one or two.
It's probably the journey to start with. I was an eczema, asthma-ridden little girl.
Ah.
Yeah, and also my nervous system was very high functioning with anxiety. So I was type A student, achieving a lot at school, with a big smile on my face every day. But what people didn't know was that I was so anxious, clenching my jaw from like the age of 12 with TMJ, lots of gut skin issues, was with asthma steroids, inhalers, cortisone, topical cortisone. So my gut health was a mess. And then I had a wonderful stepdad for about 20 years who was passionate about organic farming
Mm.
and non-GMO foods. And this was back in the day. So he introduced me to those concepts, and that changed my life. That was the seed that was planted.
Yeah.
And in my early 20s, that's the last time. I'm 40 now. My last eczema flare was probably when I was about 19 now,
Oh.
so you can absolutely manage these things with lifestyle, nutrition, and supplements in the early phases for sure. And then I noticed when I had my first son, it was a single mum. It was a surprise bubba after adventuring around the world. Brought back the best souvenir I've ever had. And I realized my credit card bill, most of this is from the health food store.
Yeah,
I'm spending a lot of money.
yeah.
And it's something I'm passionate about. Maybe I should shift from human resources, which was my original qualification, which didn't was just meaningless to me. I didn't find any satisfaction or enrichment from HR in my experience of it, and transitioned with a bubba to part-time study. And it actually made me a better student having less time, because you just really value those pockets of time,
Yeah.
and it haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's incredible because that's a big undertaking. Like most people, quote unquote, would be like, "I'll wait till kids in school and I've got more time and freedom to do this thing." But to you, it was like, this is my time and this is what I want to do. And you used to have that calling to it. And you're right, if you've seen that own or you know that sort of transformation firsthand, I do find they make the most passionate practitioners when you go, hey, I've had eczema and through my
Mm.
journey, I know how to manage it or heal it or whatever. And for me, it was the gut stuff and whatnot. Then you really truly believe in something. You're not taking secondhand information going, well, they say it works. You're going, no, I know this works and I know I can make change in people.
Absolutely. I think most people relate that firsthand experience, no matter how many scientific papers you read, firsthand experience has a profound influence on our perspective,
Yeah.
as it should be.
So did you start as a generalized naturopath and now you're sort of more targeted in immune allergy areas, or how did that
Yeah.
go?
That's probably right. So I am a generalist. I do say yes to all sorts of challenges. And,
Yeah.
I like that. That's why GPs exist
Yeah.
as well. So I'm happy to remain classified that way. What I have noticed has really increased in my clinical practice with my private practice, but also working part-time for pathology clinic, is a lot of COVID vax injury and long COVID,
Yeah.
as well as MCAS coming through. Because of my own eczema background, that's something I support a lot in little ones and adults, and of course a lot of gut health support too.
Yeah.
I used to do stool test pathology, technical support, so I'm very comfortable in that space. And I think every clinician needs a solid foundation of understanding the gut because, as you know very well, it's headquarters in its liaison with our other body systems.
Yeah. What symptoms are you seeing? Like with the long COVID stuff or the vax things, what are people presenting with? Like for me, if I'm getting a client, they're constipated, loose stools, bloating, and they tick my boxes and I'm like, yep, cool, I know how to heal you. What are we seeing here?
Really good question. And I'll just say quickly, if when it feels clear for you, Sheridan, when you're taking your case and it feels very compartmentalized to the gut, and then you notice they're responding to your gut interventions, then it is what it is. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. When you notice that standard interventions don't seem to be hitting the mark, and there's these other bizarre multi-system symptoms that they don't seem initially related, but they are, and there's a high sensitivity to what you prescribe, the likelihood is that the gut's just part of the picture, not the prime character or the main character in the story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the main features I'm seeing, and I'll say a lot of clients are really well read now. So they're turning up saying, I think I actually have long COVID, or I think I have long vax. You can use long vax injury or long COVID. Sometimes you can use these terms interchangeably because there's a massive correlation between the two, massive. So we'll have some clients saying fatigue is, I've never had anyone say fatigue is not part of the picture. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And a significant level of fatigue that's so disproportionate to the symptoms, the other symptoms around the situation. So like a chronic fatigue level description of
Oh,
fatigue. Young people saying, my actual COVID infection was modest, but the lingering symptoms are worse. That's really common for long COVID. And there are typically more younger people with long COVID than, say, severe COVID infection symptoms themselves.
yeah,
So
okay.
that's a distinction there. And what I see, and this is that clinical case taking when you're looking at the person, is you can see the circulatory system is lackluster. The skin can look a bit ashen. There's a darkness under the eyes, and there's a reason why the circulatory system is lackluster. We can talk about that later. Respiratory symptoms that are actually more vascular in their origin. So that's another symptom that I see. They have a shortness of breath or a tightening around the chest, and usually cardiology testing is all clear. Yes, so the straightforward testing, it's very common they'll come, they've already seen a GP, everything's normal in the straightforward bloods or the ECG, that's all normal. And the GP may say, I think you have anxiety. That may be one of the misdiagnoses, to be completely frank.
Yeah.
So chest pain, cognitive dysfunction, brain fog.
Yeah.
Brain fog's really common. So
Okay.
you've got to cast the net wide with long COVID and long vax. It's very rarely isolated to one body system, which makes it challenging to see from a bird's eye perspective at first, because you can feel a bit thrown and go, where do I start?
Yeah.
Where did this story even begin?
Yeah, yeah. And that's really interesting to me because I see clients who progress with their gut and some are classic. Within 1 to 2 weeks of working with me, fatigue's gone, they're feeling really good, bowel move's better, bloating's gone, like classic things that you work on and that sort of standard. Others, you're working 4 or 5 months, gut's good, hormone support's in place, adrenal support's in place, and they've still got this fatigue or some lingering type symptoms. And when you've kind of ruled out thyroid, autoimmune stuff, done a bit of Dutch testing, done a bit of gut stuff, and then you're like, something's not quite right still. I hadn't even thought to connect the dots and go, when do vaccines, when did you last get sick, when what? Because I guess, do these symptoms present in a time frame after getting sick? Like they just, you've gotten sick, like I got sick 2 weeks ago and it was terrible, but I'm good now. I'm back at 90%, right? But if you had long COVID, would you just have had these symptoms hang around?
Good question. So typically, the symptoms continue after your viral infection. And we'll call it COVID, but I think there's a lot of other viruses going on as
Yeah.
well. And I think they're actually all intersecting. There's a bit of that going on. So typically you could even have a moderate infection, but there isn't the 100% recovery experience. And it can be there for about 12 weeks. What I've also seen is people are sort of 80% there, but then they're hit with a second infection and then they really crash. So the viral load, it's not just one single viral load of COVID-19, there could be multiple viral loads. You're higher risk if you have had a significant symptom experience of Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus, EBV or CMV. These viruses are really common and most of us will have the antibodies for them, but the subgroup of the population that can have a type of glandular fever from that experience, and then the subgroup of that subgroup that can get chronic fatigue, if that's already in their past pattern, their past health story, and then they're challenged with the virus and the vax that also can, for some people, suppress their own immune response, you've got compounding layers where the body and the immune system just is not given this opportunity to regulate itself appropriately.
That's interesting. I almost want to be like, touch wood, because getting Epstein-Barr virus and glandular fever was what happened when I turned 18 and I went to Bali and I got all my gut infections and everything started. I also presented neutropenia from then on. So they did the bone marrow biopsies and they're looking and they're going, what's going on and all this stuff. And it's never quite come back into range since, right? Like, despite feeling, I want to say good now and everything's sort of being quote unquote normal. But I didn't know, that connection between going, because I see it in a lot of clients who have had Epstein-Barr virus or immune system dysfunctions, they tend to have more gut issues, and whether that's because the immune system's down-regulated or being put under more stress, so your candida and your parasites and your yeast, like I always say to them, I actually can't clear these gut infections to sort that immune system out or that chronic cortisol high stress stuff, because your body can't quite do both at once. So that does make sense as to why you would be more at risk. My brain just kind of like clicking together.
Yeah, no, beautiful. And the neutropenia that you raised, Sheridan, is really important. So that you can see through a regular blood screen with your white cell count. I have seen that low. So sometimes that is out of range. And sometimes the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio can be out of range, which is a nice little reference point that's really inexpensive to track for how the overall immune system communication is working. Often in the blood work, you'll see abnormalities with the full blood count aspect of the page. You might see the platelets are abnormally sized. And one of the mechanisms behind these abnormalities is inflammation. Before I go into that, I'll just clarify some other symptoms, just so I don't gloss over that too quickly. For some people, it can look like chronic fatigue. For other people, it can look like something called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So we've got a lot of clients mentioning nausea, especially when they go from sitting down to standing up quickly. They can't handle changes in temperature quickly. Very exaggerated allergic responses that weren't there prior. And that's what we're seeing at Perth Allergy Clinic, is just the severity of an IgE or an allergy response. That's the straightforward allergy response, has gone from maybe 2 out of 10 to 6 to 7 out of 10 for different allergens. The IgG response, the intolerance response, increases too. And overall metabolism of histamine is completely out of whack for people. So there's this other layer of going, okay, I don't just need to control inflammation from spike protein. I now also need to support the metabolism and the breakdown of histamine in this client. And this client's really sensitive. So we need to go about it really gently and really slowly so that their body doesn't just say, back off, no matter what you prescribe.
So just to clarify, we're talking long COVID, like all these symptoms, we're talking, so you've had a virus, let's just say, and you've gotten sick and these symptoms are lingering. What is the difference between that and vax injury? So we're getting similar symptoms, like these
Yes.
symptoms are from both? Yeah.
So very similar symptoms, which is why I sometimes do a really solid case taking, in fact, always, just to see the timeline. Especially the more boosters you have, the more likely some of these anomalies will be. If, you know, I know I'm saying this for awareness. I don't want anyone to feel regret, then that's not the purpose of this. I understand there are many reasons to choose those injections. But the reason why I think it's important to acknowledge this right now is that they're still being recommended, even if they're actually not clinically indicated. So if you are young and at a certain age group that's not at risk for really high symptoms of COVID infection, it's really absolutely not necessary. And what was missing from the narrative all along during all of COVID was there has always been options for reducing your symptom load with early treatment.
Mm.
And that was a part of the narrative that was poo-pooed for quite some time and actually really heavily censored.
Yeah.
That's not medically justified, it's politically and economically justified. So I am passionate now about educating clients. Don't get any more. Please don't give it to your kids when it's still in its trial phase and we don't have long-term data and they're not at risk of severe symptoms, and we can support their symptoms with early interventions. So COVID vax injury, usually for some people, it's really obvious. It's within hours and it's just a no-brainer.
Wow.
And it can present as myocarditis or pericarditis, blood clots, anaphylaxis. They're kind of really severe responses. Dysautonomia, neurological issues with tremors and shakes, that can happen within hours. This is all very well documented as well. And with my my references, if anyone would like some of these things I'm talking about in more detail, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Sheridan can share my contact.
I will.
Yes, so that's a very obvious version of a vax injury, and the VAERS, the VAERS database, is recording this as well. Even though it's underreported, it's still used as a signaling mechanism, as a reference point.
Yeah.
And it's very clear it has the worst safety profile of any vaccine ever created.
Wow.
It was explained to me, the worst safety profile than all the other protein-based vaccines
Wow.
combined.
So this is because obviously there was multiple vaccines and my knowledge on it is not great.
That's all
But
right.
there was a couple because I remember having a couple options, Novo vaccine and different bits and pieces. Do you see the Vax Injury? It doesn't matter what vaccine, or you found some present more symptoms than others?
The ones that seem to cause the most damage are the mRNA driven ones. So that's the
Yeah.
major ones.
Yeah.
Novavax was slightly different.
Yeah.
I think fewer people got the Novavax because it took so long to come out. It took
Yeah.
so long. So a lot of people were already up to dose 2 by then. We know that AstraZeneca has been removed from the market because it's not
Yeah.
safe.
I did hear
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely removed from the market. And a couple of years ago, we were told that it was, so it's really important with medicine, especially in its trial phase, to always have the opportunity to ask questions, to have a choice, and to reasonably discuss these things without being shut down. That's what true science is about.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
about fear-driven narratives that lead to a lot of regret. A lot of these long COVID and long vax clients that I see were in good health and could have simply supported their immune systems with COVID infection.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of them can't go to work now. They're young people. They took it to keep the job. They can't do the job because they're injured or they have long COVID.
Yeah,
So
and the fear mongering, like, I mean, it's not just around COVID, we see it around everything in the health space, right? Like HRT and estrogens and fat in the diet and too many carbs in the diet and too much sugar. And it's almost become a part of this way of life now that it's like, well, you're almost bullied in a sense to an answer because we do get scared. And of course, we're going to get scared. If there's a virus out there and it can potentially be life threatening, and the media is doing whatever it likes to do with true or not true information. Like, unless there's enough Natashas spread out far and wide saying, hey, this is actually what we could be doing, or these are the herbs that are going to support your immune system, or like consider these approaches with like, it's like no wonder you're saying to people, well, don't have regret, because it is a part of what happened, and
Yeah, that's right.
let's go, where are we now? And like you said, you're seeing these sort of people going, okay, you've now got long COVID symptoms, this is how we're going to work with it, because it's like, it was a hard time, it was intense, there was emotions, people are in lockdown, like it's like you're losing your jobs, you want to go to work, like it was such a big thing that to make a clear documented choice without negative side effects of not being able to go to weddings or funerals or like birthdays, all those things, it's such a hard thing to navigate.
It was the most collective international pressure cooker of all time, like unprecedented. And because technology allowed for communication to be instant globally, that was such synchronized and intelligently distributed pressure. So I'm with you, no regrets. And when it comes to healthcare, before and after COVID, holistic healthcare, your healing is in your hands. There are things you can do. I see people getting better. The only reason I'm drawing attention to it now is that these products are still in the market and they have a poor safety profile. And it's important to go, hey, I'm not going to have any more of those. What's done is done. And now I'm going to support my body to regulate itself appropriately. And yes, of course, there are tools to do that. That's why I do what I do. I've seen wonderful improvements in people's health.
So let's flick onto that. What things are you finding are helpful from a naturopathic standpoint, or whether there's medicines or integrative GP standpoint? Are there things that you like, hey, these, and obviously disclaimer to everybody, we are qualified in our field. Please don't go prescribe at home and go drink a whole bottle of echinacea. So just like FYI, but there's obviously things that you find are working with people, or are making these changes in their immune system and stuff as well.
Absolutely. So I like your question about working with GPs or integrative GPs. I actually do that more in this area than perhaps for other health issues. Not initially. So initially we start with as much natural treatment as we can do. And we, as you know, you and I can prescribe all sorts of fantastic tests and refer for them. However, I have seen really great coupling with some pharmaceuticals that are long established with a long safety profile. Also working really well for some clients over and above. So I can get to that at one point, but I do want to say you don't just have to have one practitioner when you have these multi-system symptoms. It makes sense that sometimes you need more than one clinician to support that. And it's perfectly okay, and give yourself permission to do that.
I think that is a statement that I want on a t-shirt, because I see so many clients where I'm like, it's okay to see a skin practitioner to get the right topical skincare, and to see an acupuncturist if you need, acupuncture work done as well, and to see me to do your gut health stuff. Like and then an integrative GP if you need compounded hormones or things as well. Like, it's okay. And like you said, you also can't expect one person to do all these things as well. Like, you come to Natasha because she's amazing in her field, but she can't also, give you a haircut at the same time. Like, it's like trying, you go to people because they're great in their space. Like you said, giving yourself permission to work with multiple people is actually very responsible.
Agreed. And I'm passionate about not being territorial about any clients at all. You just, greatness speaks for itself. And a generosity of spirit and humility in where our limits are is really important. Really, really important. One thing when it comes to how I like to support it, the first question is, what is the major body system that's dominating this picture right now? So that I don't have a cookie cutter approach to what's prescribed. I will mention a fantastic resource for clients and clinicians to consider, because it's so it's well stocked in a lot of content on long vax and long COVID. And it's called FLCCC, Frontline COVID Critical Care.com. FLCCC. Amazing. They've got protocols there as well that are a combination of natural and integrative medicine. Yeah. And there's some fantastic integrative doctors speaking there. You'll get a lot of segues from that one website. So that's something I've referenced for the last 4 years, really.
Yeah, yeah.
The spike protein and its damage is just something I want to mention when it comes to the multi-system inflammation. So let's stick with long COVID. After a COVID infection, the virus has replicated by about 10 days, and then it starts to be shed from the body.
Yeah.
What can happen is our own immune system is causing much of the inflammation that lingers after that.
Yeah.
So in the initial phase of infection, early intervention, even if your symptoms are really mild, do something about it. So that's that first sort of 10 days, you really want more of an antiviral approach. And then from about day 10 onwards, it's more of an anti-inflammatory and lymphatic system to clear approach. So some people are really struggling in that phase 2 of the inflammation and the debris, the inflammatory debris. It's like, an island after a shipwreck with all the smashed up pieces of wood washed up to shore. That needs to be dealt with because the immune system is very dysregulated. It's overactive. It's oversensitive. And that's where other things like MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and histamine issues can come in, because guilty by association, if you start to expose yourself to something else whilst there's already a fire burning, the body will say, well, you're a pathogen as well, you're a threat as well. And we can become hypersensitive to anything that's literally just nearby.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So our body was doing the right thing. And it's a really good thing to remember for these chronic inflammatory states and these long COVID, long vax states. The body was initially responding to a threat appropriately. And then it shifted from adaptive to maladaptive.
Yeah.
And we literally need to give it a software update to say, hey, that actual threat is in the past. This is like nervous system work as well, right?
Yeah.
That threat is in the past. It's not there now. And you need to constantly remind the body very regularly, the threat's not there now. The threat's not there now. You can be calm. You can regulate, not suppress, but modulate and regulate.
Yeah, and isn't that the key to everything we do? Like, yes, in long COVID stuff, but like hormone, like everything, gut work, everything, because we have that constant stressor from everything. Like, yes, the immune system, but yes, external constant stresses. And I see all these women, yeah, who aren't having periods or things like that because their body's like in this constant, like, oh no, we're still stressed. You underfed us for a while. You took away our carbs. Like, we had all these gut infections, all this stuff going on. And they're like, no, we're still in fight or flight. We're still in fight or flight. And because we're not going grounding, get outside, support the immune system, like slow down, we are in these busy, constant, quick fix dopamine cycles. I love that. That's
Beautifully said. So our nervous system needs that constant reminder as well. I fully agree with you, Sheridan. And one thing that is common with my treatment goal, no matter which system is dominating, whether it's respiratory, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, skin, dizziness, nausea, allergens, histamine, hay fever, brain fog, whichever it is, what needs to be supported all the way through is the circulatory system and the vascular system. And COVID is a vascular disease. COVID-19 is a vascular disease more so than a respiratory disease. It presents in the respiratory system because there's a high representation of something called your ACE2 receptors in the lungs. But it's through vascular damage that we get our symptoms. And that's predominantly via the spike protein that loves to irritate the endothelium, or the lining, the cells that line our vascular system. What happens when our blood vessels and the lining becomes erosive and damaged, then the body appropriately produces microclots or larger clots if it's really serious, to try and be like a balm to soothe that area of the vascular endothelium that's inflamed. So then we have that secondary symptom of microclotting, and in some cases, as people know, fatal levels of clotting.
yeah.
So to support the lining with anti-inflammatories that are really great for vascular tone is really, really important, no matter which body system is showing the symptoms. And this is really why there's so much fatigue. It's more about this sluggish, sticky platelet blood
Yeah.
not flowing. So it's having a B vitamin's great, but it's not actually quite the reason why you're tired. It's not the
Yeah.
same
I was
etiology.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like when you said a lot of people present with this fatigue, and your first line of thought is like check iron, check Bs, check cortisol pattern, are you adrenal fatigue, hormones, all that stuff. But you're right, there's not more complex, but those complex things going on, which actually that makes sense. And that flow on from the virus. I see that.
But you're absolutely right. You want those other nutrient pillars to be in place, like your iron, your B12, your vitamin D. I like vitamin D over 110, even though the reference range is above 50.
Yeah, it's
Over,
low.
yeah, very low, very
Every
low.
time I see it, I'm always like, what are we doing here? Excuse
Yeah.
me, like.
You want it nice and optimal. So that's all very valid. And often that's when you know it's more of a long COVID or a long vax client, when those things might be in range and okay, and they're so tired. But don't forget to look at their actual skin tone, because when our circulatory system is lackluster, the skin tone does change and it has a kind of washed out
Yeah.
tone to it.
So how are you working with these people then? Is it then your dietary based and modifying things, or you're prescribing liquid herbs, and or like there must be a multifaceted approach going on here?
Yeah, and you'll relate to some of these scripts because they relate to a lot of the gut work you're doing. So for a client that's looking where histamine and MCAS may be part of the picture, and they just seem like I'm reacting to everything I eat, I bloat, but I've also got brain fog, and sometimes their stool test is actually quite unremarkable as well. That's also part of it. They may be a little bit of leaky gut, but nothing super pathogenic.
Yeah.
So an unremarkable stool test, but really strong gut symptoms. That can often be what you see.
Yeah.
So I like to first use in that hypersensitive client. I don't tend to prescribe liquid herbs immediately because I think that they're high in salicylates, liquid herbs as well. So for some people that can be an issue. I start with simple nutrients like a really good immunoregulatory probiotic with strains that regulate the Treg cells and help calm an overactive immune response, because we know the gut and the immune system are terms that we could actually use interchangeably. Binders. Binders are a really good
Mm.
starting point when there's just inflammation and debris and histamine occurring in the body. So that can be something as simple as Saccharomyces boulardii if there isn't a picture of constipation.
Yeah.
If there is, I don't choose that strain. I also like silica-based binders like Enteris gel.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used that one quite a bit actually. I feel like
Mm.
Binder's a little bit of an unsung hero though. Like we
Mm.
almost don't use them enough, and I find client compliance with binders is pretty shocking because of the like you got to take them away from food or herbs or before or after. It's not just like a wake up and take it and you're good to go kind of thing. So I find like I really have to like push them, be like, these are good, these work well, do take them. Because for me, like Toxiprevent and
Mm.
Enteros gel played actually a big part in a lot of my gut healing.
Mm.
And
Mm.
but it's one of the hard ones to get people to understand the importance of them, because they're kind of like, it's not, is it doing anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very fair. And yes, Toxiprevent is another good one that's great. With the binders, you also, as you're saying, if you have them near supplements, they're going to bind. So they're logistically annoying,
Mm.
but very therapeutic. And I think I have high compliance from the clients that have the worst symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is natural. When we feel like crap, of course, we're motivated to be as devoted as we can to our healing. So sometimes when I have clients saying, oh, I haven't taken this and that, I say to them, well, it's possibly a blessing in disguise. Perhaps your symptom severity isn't completely consuming your life.
Yeah.
So there's also that aspect to it, but I find them really helpful in that initial hypersensitive, I react to anything stage, those binders. Then I do like to, of course, support the nervous system. So good mitochondrial support with activated Bs, ubiquinol form of CoQ10, just because I don't think the body needs extra pressure in converting it over.
Mm.
NAC, so we want spike protein and proteolytic support we want to degrade the spike. We want to support the kidneys that also have a high representation of ACE receptors. They need a lot of TLC. So NAC is really good for kidneys as well, not just the liver.
Know that because I use it for liver, but also for biofilm. It's kind of like,
Beautiful.
yeah, probably my two reasons for it. But honestly, in my heavy, painful period clients as well, like I can see changes within a couple weeks just from taking NAC. Everyone's different, like that's not a represent, but that and like because biofilm is it's hard to tell if NAC is working on it because you can't actually like you can kind of see what's happening with their symptoms, but it's not the same. But yeah, I remember I feel like around COVID there was a push for NAC because of the immune system things that it supports as well, I thought.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it during acute symptoms as well. So I fully agree with what you're observing. So when you take N-acetylcysteine or NAC, you're supporting the lung tissue. It's fantastic for lungs where there's high ACE2 receptor expression, and ACE2 receptors allow for the COVID virus to engage with the cell and attach to the host. So that's the doorway to viral replication. Yeah, so we've got NAC that supports lungs, liver, as you know, particularly our phase 2 detoxification. That's why your hormone clients are getting results as
Yeah.
well. As long as they're pooing regularly and it's not double dipping, then it's good. And then in the kidneys as well, it's been shown to improve the tone of nephrons, the kidney cells, as well as improving kidney filtration rate. So I really like its multi-system benefits. If there are respiratory symptoms, it can often help those too, particularly if there's a wet or productive cough. Being a sulfur-based compound, it's great at breaking up and decongesting as well. So NAC I use quite a lot. I'm cautious with MCAS clients, so I wouldn't do that in the initial script. I'd start with some binders, maybe a probiotic, and maybe a B vitamin. That might be that could even just be the first point. And sometimes I like to say to clients, hey, step one is low, slow dosing and literally introducing your body to these nutrients like a first date. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Don't be scared. So tolerance is the first goal before therapeutic outcome.
Yeah.
And to really explain that this is a journey that you will get better. But if we go in with guns blazing, these things could backfire, and then your body will associate these interventions to being a threat.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. And I see that clinically if someone comes in and just wants all the things, like if they're like a me and they're just like, load me up, let's do it. I want to get this done. I'm on a time limit. I've got shit to do. I just need to kill these bacteria, it's like go, go, go. And then all of a sudden their body's like, excuse me, this is not how we do things. It's like, and I think that's part of the reason I changed it to a 6-month program with people because I was like, girl, you need time. Like, you cannot come in and just go, let's treat this stuff. It's like, detox, go slowly, support the immune system because your body's so intuitive. Like, it knows. And it's like, you're rushing me. I don't want to be rushed. I've got a nervous system. I'm trying to calm down, and you're throwing stuff at me and got bacteria dying off left, right, and center. And it's like, just, you're right, that slow stepping in, and especially in your case with those clients would be hypersensitive, I kind of imagine as well. You just got to take it easy.
yeah, and forgiveness and acceptance that that's the process. It will take time and you will get there. It's both of those things are true at the same time. It's a massive lesson in compassion to self in a society that's very outcomes focused and very productivity focused. Like you're saying, let's get shit done. Imagine, someone said to me yesterday, a really great chiro that I see, he said, imagine if we treated our cars the way we treat our bodies, what our car would look like.
Yeah.
It would just be full of stuff. It would probably last 3 months. The motor would run out. So we do expect a lot from our bodies. They get dragged around left, right, and center. And often we only listen to symptoms once they're really, really loud.
Yeah.
But usually there have been clues long before those symptoms become so
We're good at
strong.
hiding them. That's where Panadol comes in and birth control comes in and antibiotics come in and all this stuff comes in and people are like, oh no, I'm fine. And they haven't pooed for 3 days and they take, strong Panadols every period and they feel like that's normal and they're quite sluggish but our baseline has dropped quite low, I realize, because when I tell people how much stuff I get done in a day, and they're like, aren't you exhausted? And I'm like, well, sometimes, yeah, I'm overdoing it, but let's be honest, my body is supported to do so much. The minerals I give it, the food I give it, the vitamins I give it. It's like I have a high expectation of it because I'm taking really good care of it. Whereas a lot of people feel quite sluggish and wake up tired or bloated or have a lingering cough, and they're kind of like, well, I've just got this cough now. Or lingering fatigue is a big one. Everyone's tired, and without going, is it long COVID? Is it something else? Are my adrenals a bit exhausted? Have I been overdoing it? We do just push through with stimulants and alcohol and caffeine and drugs and whatever, going, this is what the human experience is. And it's like, well, no.
Yeah. So sometimes, you know, from a philosophical perspective, these experiences do give us that turning point in how we are compassionate to ourselves. And I love that you support yourself so much with high task load. And I'm sure you probably value, you mentioned you love mountain biking and getting out in nature and getting out of the mind as well and into the body, you know, into our
Somatic
body.
stuff has been probably one of the biggest things I've pulled into clinic in the last 3-4 months of just going, go see. I interviewed the most amazing, this off topic here, but somatic sexologist. Go listen to the podcast I did with
I
her.
will.
I think she's in Sydney, actually, Alice Child. It was incredible, and not from a kinky sex point of view, from a just going back into like the body, like extrapolating from the mind, that, and then listening to somatic meditation podcasts to give to my clients. And just, you're so right, like getting out of the thought and just feeling. And it's, yeah, I could talk about that all day. It's a game changer for people.
Well, a lot of, you know, these clients with long COVID or long vax that are so fatigued do find themselves exploring that space more because they're literally stuck in bed. They're meditating more. So it is a wonderful metamorphosis of insight that can follow this. So I did want to mention as well, those high athlete, high performance clients, I've actually seen quite a few with long COVID and long vax. And one of the theories may be about the fact that they do push their cardio a lot more, and the circulatory system is under a lot more pressure.
Yes.
So they can really feel that difference in performance. So one of the goals we have for them is to complete, not compete initially when they're going back to these triathlons or marathons.
I guess,
And,
sorry, I guess that does make sense just quickly, because if you have someone who doesn't do long exercise and isn't pushing that circulatory system, they're not going to identify that there's a particular issue. Yeah.
That's right. They're going into fifth gear all the time. And so that contrast is very obvious very quickly. And as you've seen probably a lot of athletes dying suddenly as well with these long vax and long COVID injuries because they just push their bodies to these limits. So nattokinase is a really nice nutrient for particularly the athletes when you want to support fibrinolytic or proteolytic protein degrading aspects of the clotting and the sticky blood. So it's considered like a natural antiplatelet, and it's soy-derived enzyme. So I like nattokinase. You've just got to be careful, of course, as Sheridan said, we need to do a case taken to see if you're on other pharmaceuticals, because you don't want to combine a strong antiplatelet medication and these medications, because then you can have the risk of the blood being too thin. Yeah. So nattokinase is a great one. I love if they are tolerating things well and we're sort of at this next phase of support, there are some fantastic herbs that cover the vascular system as well as energy and fatigue. And they're called immune adaptogens. So they're these plants that manage to intersect between supporting your adrenals and your immune system regulation hand in hand.
Wow.
Yeah, so clever. Plants are so clever.
I know, they're the best.
Ginkgo is a classic. I love ginkgo. And even if it's just 10 to 20 mils in a formula, that circulatory stimulation and that oxygenation flow support that comes through it is really significant. Cordyceps, I like reishi, Bicol skullcap. Poke root is really great for clearing the lymphatic system, for that debris that we talked about, the inflammatory debris. Siberian ginseng, withania, holy basil.
Yes.
astragalus. There's lots of beautiful herbs. So if you are noticing you can tolerate them, fantastic. And you can build your tolerance. Start on 1 ml or 5 drops after food, or dilute it in a herbal tea.
Do you know, like what I think about liquid herbs is, and this is not my space, but and we chatted about this briefly at the start, there must be, and I'm going to crucify this from a naturopathic point of view, but there must be certain energetics to herbs in a sense, right? Like when you're looking at the dried herbs, which everybody I see amazing clinical benefits with, I'm not downplaying them at all. But if I compare them to liquid herbs, and like you said, there might be sensitivities and things to them as well, but there is something magically energetic about taking a liquid herb. I can't use the words for it. Like I'm kind of like, but there's like almost a feeling. I don't know. It's you feel closer to the plant rather than when it's dry. Yeah, I don't know.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Is that your first-hand experience? Have you had tonics and felt that?
Yes, I have, because about a year or so ago, I went to Bali and I got really, really unwell again, and I lost my period over there again, and my immune system cracked it at me. And
Mm.
I started seeing a naturopath, and we did some immune work and also some support for skin health and stuff. And yeah, I can't self-treat anyway because it's too hard. And I like to, when I am seeing a practitioner, like if I was to go see you, which I hand on heart would, I like someone who does something different to what I do, because then I might as well feel like I'm self-treating. Anyway, she was
Mm.
sending me liquid herbs and stuff, and there was just, I don't know, there's just something really nice about it. And I love the taste and stuff of it as well. Even though they're bitter, it is, I don't know, it's an
Yeah.
experience is probably the way of saying it. I don't know.
Beautifully said. It's an experience, and those bitter qualities that you'll have in your tonic, no matter what the combination, people, there will be a bit of flavor through there.
Always bitter.
That stimulates a healthy immune response,
Mm,
that bitter, the actual taste of bitterness, and
yeah,
it stimulates the taste before the phytochemistry or the plant chemistry's had a chance to work its magic. Even just the taste of bitter has very therapeutic impact on immune system regulation, liver, gallbladder, and blood sugar regulation. And I agree with you. If you can tolerate the liquid blends, they are bespoke, so they are for you. They are really easily and quickly absorbed by the body, and there's no preservatives, fillers, inactive ingredients. It's just a whole plant tincture. So there is something special about that. I couldn't agree more.
yeah,
And there are ways to build tolerance to it. So don't give up if it's just not working for you straight away. There's
yeah.
another magical plant that naturopaths can't prescribe, but I recommend people sort their own scripts for with long COVID and COVID vax, is medicinal CBD or cannabis oil.
Yes, I yes have spoken to people, heard of this before. Obviously, haven't prescribed and whatever, but it's come up in my world over the last year. I reckon people getting it from places I don't know exactly, but yeah, and the difference they're noticing on it is great.
It covers a lot of ground and you can titrate your dose. So from a long vax or long COVID perspective, it down regulates ACE2 receptor expression, which means if a virus can't attach to a cell, it can't replicate.
Yeah, yeah,
So your viral load is much lower.
yeah.
It's also highly anti-inflammatory. And as I said, that second phase of long COVID or long vax is inflammatory driven. And it's fantastic for your nervous system, muscle aches and pains, sleep. So you cover a lot of ground with it. And I have quite a few clients with long COVID or long vax that also integrate this into their script. Those triathletes and pro weekend warrior athletes as well, I have them having a few drops before they do a big run or a big bike ride, and
Okay.
then a few drops afterwards to try and just bring that inflammation down in the body before it has a chance to take hold.
Yeah, okay. I wanna, yeah, I'm gonna look into that after, because I've got so many like athlete clients and stuff. But that's interesting. That's on my nerd list.
And cordyceps for your athlete clients as well is a great option for performance, but also for long vax, long COVID, immune system. Uh, Fantastic. So cordyceps would be a chief herb, or rhodiola, that I'd consider for the athlete client. And not to underestimate, it's really simple what I'm about to say, but electrolytes,
Mm,
really good quality electrolytes and trace minerals so
Yes.
that our blood volume is healthy, our blood pressure is healthy, our adrenals are thanking us, our blood sugar is stable. It's a very inexpensive and great long-term health tool. I recommend proper electrolytes, not the effervescence that you get
No,
from the chemist.
no,
Yeah, some good quality ones.
everyone who comes into my program, they're buying trace mineral drops, the Aussie
Oh,
trace
nice.
drops, or the
Nice.
actual trace mineral drops, because I'm just like, it is the key. Minerals are the spark plugs to the body, I believe, and setting those foundations right from the get-go is like, look, if you're not having adequate minerals, trace elements, the things in your diet, there's not a lot we can do further up the stream. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's foundational. Yeah.
so,
Beautiful. Yeah. So trace minerals or an electrolyte, you could add trace minerals to filtered water, or you could,
yeah,
I quite like Ancient Lakes
yeah,
electrolytes. They're
yes,
good.
they
It's
are
just
good.
pure salts. And you could just do a quarter or half of a teaspoon a day, have a large drink bottle, sip it through the day. So that's really important foundational work. I think the main takeaway message from a treatment perspective is to be kind and low and slow and gentle on your body first, to outsource support to someone that's comfortable, a practitioner that's comfortable with multi-system, sort of a broad range of symptoms that are not isolated to one body system. And to remember that if one nutrient doesn't work for you immediately, your threshold can change. So don't give up straight away. If you get to a point where you've had some benefit, but it's not adequate from these interventions, that's where the integrative GP script could be a complement. And the two main beneficial prescriptions I've witnessed personally were in low dose naltrexone, LDN.
On that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's low dose, so it is a type of opioid, but it's very, very low dose, as well as ivermectin, or Stramectol is the generic name. That was very controversial as a while. It's been around for a very long time. And if you spend some time reading into its history, you'll see that it won a Nobel Prize. It's been used on pediatric care, so in children and geriatric and elderly, for many, many years. The main issue with ivermectin and its scandal is it's well past its patent, which means anyone can generically manufacture it, which means it's very inexpensive, which means there's absolutely no new money to be made in this particular drug. There's no money in it, but it is wonderful and anti-inflammatory. It's not just antiviral, it's a really good anti-inflammatory. Sheridan, from a gut perspective, you might be interested that it is also anti-parasitic and anti-helminthic, but you can get a bit of diarrhea from it. So that's where SB is a nice little complement alongside it, if that's how
And
you respond to it.
they're both functional GP. Like I've been on the low dose naltrexone at this 5, 6, 7 years ago with some of my, like when they were just trying to figure out what was going on with me, and it was just one of the things. But to be honest, I got such bad nightmares from it after like 10 to 12 days, and I know it is one of the side effects, but they were terrible that I couldn't even hack through it. Like after a couple of weeks, I was like, I cannot take this. And some people are fine, other people like myself are just like, no.
Yeah, and really important to share that with your clients. That's great. Thank you for educating me on that. That's a really important. If something doesn't work for you, stop. Ginkgo can give you wild dreams sometimes too, depending.
Yeah.
Not terrible, but wild and vivid. So sometimes the timing of when you dose something can change the impact in your sleep. And that's probably why I try medicinal CBD oil before I tried LDN, that would be the hierarchy I'd look at it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but different strokes for different folks. But please know, if some of these interventions give you benefits, but you still need more support, there are more options. And I would also go back to that FLCCC
Yeah.
website to read some fantastic, well-researched content there on, the things that we've talked about today.
I think, and also it comes back to this thing of working with a practitioner. So it comes back to working with someone like yourself or someone similar in that field who obviously has this broad depth of knowledge. But the big thing about working with a practitioner is they have seen hundreds, in your and my cases, thousands and thousands of cases of clients, of side effects, things that work, of die-off symptoms, of reactions, of all that stuff. Whereas when you're trying to self-treat and you're guessing, then you're in and out, and the only experience you have to deal with is your own and Google, which is a rabbit hole. So it's nicer because then I could come to you and say, hey, this has given me nightmares. What's another option? Or how are we tolerating it? Or what does this say about my body? Or I'm reacting to these herbs. Can we change the dosage? Like, it's just, you have that relationship and you continue to progress. You don't stop and go, it's too hard. The symptoms aren't worth it.
Well said. I couldn't agree more.
So I think I'm going to wrap that up because my brain just like, there's so many things. I've got clients after this and my brain's like, oh, I just want to go down all these rabbit holes and have a read, because this has just been absolutely phenomenal. Like, your knowledge is second to none, but you have this beautiful presence that even through, and I haven't said this to anyone before, so you are going to take the cake with this, but even through a Zoom call, I can feel the warmth and the energy and the things you express as a person. And as a practitioner, I think that's amazing, because people don't just come to you because they believe in a hope of that I'm going to get better. They believe in you, right? So as a naturopath, you're calming their nervous system and their energy just by seeing you and by working with you and going, oh, not only does Natasha believe in me, but I feel better when I've seen her. And I feel like from that grounding and presence that you first came into the podcast with, saying, hey, people, get outside and put your feet in the dirt, like that is exactly the kind of energy you possess. And to have that even through technology is something else. I feel very calm after this podcast. I'm not a calm person, so that's saying
I feel energized and inspired by you. So you've got a very effervescent vibe. Thank you so much, Sheridan. Yeah, please, everyone, remember, we are not our symptoms. That we are more than that. We are mind, body, spirit, and the body is deeply intelligent. We've been told for many years that we need to outsource all of our wisdom, all of our healing. There's so much the body can do when it's given the right tools, the right support, the right environment and context. So remember, we are more than our symptoms, not to be defined by our pathologies, our disease states, and that there is much to learn from them over and above the physical healing that can take place.
Yeah, no, and for everyone listening, I will link into the show notes Natasha's website, her Instagram, and also your Facebook link as well. So that all three are just your name, Natasha Sidoti, but I will link those in for you guys so you can have a look. And of course, I will tag her in my stuff on socials. So when this podcast comes out, you guys will be able to see that, or you'll be able to flick back to my feed and find the one with Tash as well. And I'll also pop in the FLCCC link as well. I'll grab that after and pop that in, and anything else that we decide after this podcast might be helpful for you guys. But just thank you so much. Your knowledge is incredible. I've learned heaps, and I will be re-listening to this podcast, which I don't do because re-listening to yourself is weird. And for anyone who thinks it's not, it is. So I never listen to my podcast episodes, but this one is so full of gems that I will be referring to, will just be annoying you from here on in, because it's just, thank you. Yeah, just
it's such a pleasure. And thank you for what you do for health and the community, of the international community, and for your very niche knowledge. I've listened to a few of yours. I learned about your skill and your niche as well. So if everybody just offers their little gems, that's the way it works best.
It works best. Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks,